Hi everyone, I'm in a new place for this video, not a new place to me. Today I'm trying filming at work for a couple reasons. Mostly at home, I have a really hard time getting time to myself to film, and my background is boring, and just a lot of reasons. This just seemed like a better place. Downside that I've noticed in testing a few times is that the bottle drop next door is really loud. So you're gonna hear some clanks and some bangs in the background. It's because this wall behind me is shared with a recycling center where they are processing bottles and cans, and they are one of the busiest places in Oregon right now while everything's closed. The bottle drop is crazy. I talked about it last week in my video about how the line was blocking my door. The line's not blocking my door, but outside my door has turned into bicycle parking because most of the people who are coming to the bottle drop are people who don't have homes or are extremely low income, and this is their only way to make money. So that's why the bottle drop hasn't closed, because if they close, then basically the most marginalized of people will be suddenly cut off from the small incomes that they have. So it's really important that those people are able to continue getting their income. I fully understand that. And I'm glad they're doing what they can to make it safe for me at my business, at the same time as trying to make it as safe as they can for everyone going to the bottle drop. On to the meat of today's video. I already did my shot. I did it at home this morning. I don't think I'm going to do my shot on camera too often because I don't want to anymore. And I've already done it in past videos, so if you want to see it, maybe down the line eventually I'll do another one on camera or talk about the process again, or I'll maybe do that when my dose increases or something like that. But for the time being, I'm not going to do my shot on camera. It's much easier to do off camera and less painful. I have kind of two sections of stuff I want to talk about today. The first is updates about what I'm experiencing on tea. I am getting really hairy. I paused there for a sec because I'm kind of worried that it's not recording, because that happened to me the other day. Okay, it's definitely recording, so sorry about that. I'm using the back camera on the phone to try and get slightly higher video quality for you all instead of the front-facing camera like I usually do, so I'm nervous that it's going to stop recording and I'm going to not notice it. Anyway, changes on tea. I'm getting a lot more hairy every single day. I can notice it. It's awesome. I'm so excited. I am obsessed with my new hair. I just love it. On my legs, on my arms, on my belly, just kind of everywhere, on my face, just a little bit on my chest. Haven't noticed anything in my back or shoulders yet, which is kind of nice. I would prefer that to not get too hairy, but you get what you get. And I'm very comfortable with the fact that I'm going to get what I get. And that's what you get. So that has been really great. This past week, I was actually texting a trans friend of mine pictures of my belly hair because I got to show it off to somebody. I got someone who appreciates it, And I actually looked in the mirror at my back, and I was just like, holy cow, my back and shoulders have gotten so much visibly stronger, and they're getting so much bigger that my shirts are starting to not fit. I've already gone up a shirt size, and I'm thinking that eventually I'm probably going to go up another shirt size. So all my small t-shirts do not fit anymore, which is a real bummer because I really like a lot of them, and because I am broke and can't afford new t-shirts right now. Luckily, I've got a couple hookups from a couple skate companies who have given me a few shirts. Any other skate companies want to give me more shirts? That would be awesome. So at least I have clothes to wear, and I get these Vans shirts at the Vans outlet when there's not a pandemic for pretty cheap. So that's pretty nice too. If anyone has a recommendation for comfy, cheap shirts I can order online, I would also appreciate it in the US. I know I have trans friends in the UK. So those are the big tea changes that are going on right now that I've noticed, and I'm really stoked on that. I am not stoked. The acne is on and off every day. One day it'll be really bad, then it'll start to get better. not happy about it, but dealing with it, doing the best I can to manage it and to not overly dry out my skin. And then I want to shift a little bit and talk about something I noticed this week that I'm not the first person to notice, but I don't see a lot of people talk about it, and it kind of lends itself from what I was talking about last week about the intersection of being autistic and trans. And to back up a little bit, I've been doing this free online college course through Coursera. It's not nearly as intense as a real college course because at this point I'm not writing any papers or anything like that, and that is the really hard part of true college and university courses is writing papers and doing these big assignments. And there's none of that, but there's a ton of good material and a ton of material. Let's see, do I have it on here? Yeah, it is called What Does It Mean to Identify as Transgender or Gender Nonconforming? And I've only done the first 2 weeks, so, I don't know how the rest of it's going to go. How many weeks are there? There's 7 weeks of content that you can just work through. This is free, so you can go find this on Coursera.org. It is through Michigan University, something in Michigan, some kind of Michigan University. University of Minnesota. Sorry, scratch that. Not Michigan. University of Minnesota, and some of the videos in it are really good. The videos they made for this are by far the best content that I've experienced. They link to a ton of articles of varying quality, some of which contradict each other, so that's interesting. But the videos are really good. They have some trans people who talk in the videos. But one thing that they talk about in week 2 is the pronouncing words is hard. Pathology. I should have practiced this word. Pathologizing. Is that close enough? Of trans people, where they're, where you take something that shouldn't really be considered a disease and you make it into a disease. Pathologization. Forgive me. I need to hear someone pronounce this word. Pronounce. There we go.
Pathologization.
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 Pathologization. That is a really hard word. Especially if you've never said it before and you're dyslexic. This is just a monster of a word. Pathologization. So, in the course, they talk about the pathologization of trans people and how that has been the norm for about 200 years. And we're finally moving away from that, which basically that means they've seen trans people as broken, diseased, mentally ill. Something's wrong with you. It is some type of disease or disorder for almost 200 years now. Whereas before that, that wasn't necessarily the case. And I am talking strictly of white, Western, colonized nations here. First Nations and Indigenous people and Native people have had a much more healthy view of trans and gender nonconforming people for a long, long time and a long tradition. It's white Western nations and those cultures where they really struggle with people who don't fit into the gender binary correctly. And as I was reading about this, the thing that really hit me is how this is exactly the same pattern we see for autism. It's the same thing we see for autistic people, that they've always existed. We've always existed. We've always been around, both autistic and trans people and those of us who intersect those places. We've always existed. We've always been around. But for the last 200 years in white Western culture especially, we've been viewed as broken, diseased, needing to be fixed. Something is wrong with these people, both groups. And yeah, it really hit me how much there is in common between the two groups. And I wrote down a couple notes when I was thinking about it here. The main thing I noticed is that the mental health issues, that both groups are more likely to have mental illness. Autism in and of itself and being trans in and of itself are not mental illnesses. They are not. But it is very common for people in both groups to experience other mental illnesses. For me, that's anxiety all the time. So much of it, but I have gotten a lot better at dealing with it than I used to. Anxiety is really common, both in autistic people and in trans people. And there's different reasons for that, but one of the biggest ones is not that there's a problem with us, but how the world sees us and reacts to us. That the world doesn't like people to be different. The world doesn't like when autistic people talk differently or walk differently or look differently or don't talk at all. That's not my case. You can never get me to stop talking. But being different is not okay in our culture, especially in the ways that autistic and trans people often are different. I was bullied as a kid pretty relentlessly for things that are related directly to the fact that I am autistic and directly to the fact that I am trans. I was bullied for looking like a boy, for not being able to tell if are you a boy or are you a girl. I was bullied for these things. I was bullied for not talking right. I was bullied for liking things too much. I was bullied for my height. That has nothing to do with either of those things, but it's another part of my genetics and what makes me me that isn't something that's wrong with me. My height isn't something that's wrong with me, but it's something that the world sees as wrong with me. And that's where the pathologization, getting better, of autistic and trans people come from. It comes from these cultural ideas of what people should be like. And that's not our fault. Like, that's not the fault of an autistic person. That's not the fault of a trans person. We aren't broken. The world is broken. Culture is broken. And it's extremely narrow ideas of how people should act and how people should be and what people are worth. A lot of trans people, or not trans people, sorry, a lot of autistic people who also experience intellectual disabilities or other disabilities or maybe have epilepsy have even more on them from the world, can be even more severely put down, pathologized, bullied, seen as broken or less than human. And God, it just makes me so angry because some of these people are my friends and my family and people that I love, and it just, there's nothing wrong with them. They don't need to be fixed. The world needs to learn how to accommodate different people. And it is exactly the same thing for trans people. The world doesn't know how to see me most of the time. Or if they do, they automatically assume I am a cis woman who is a lesbian. And those things aren't true because they can only look at me and see one thing. They can't, our culture isn't, our culture just isn't built in a way to look at a person and not automatically assume that they fit in one or the other gender boxes that are broken and suffocating, even for the people who fit in those boxes. Even the people who identify strongly with the gender that they were given at birth, those boxes hurt them too. It hurts cis women and it hurts cis men because it says what you can and can't do. It says things like to be afraid of being gay. What? So I just wanted to note that crossover of how those two groups experience these higher rates of mental illness, partly because the world treats us as different and weird and broken. And, that's just intrinsically not how it is. Another thing I noted here that I haven't touched on yet is how both neurodiversity, which includes people who are autistic, people who have ADHD, and just any non-typical brain function, and people who are gender diverse, are both natural parts of human diversity that have existed for as long as we have history, essentially. Both of those groups of people who have always existed, they're part of human diversity, and diversity is valuable to humanity. We need people who think differently. We need people who act differently. We need diversity in our genetics. We need it, and we need to value these populations of people who are so different, including myself. So I'm advocating both for myself and for a lot of people who have it even harder than I do. A lot of people who struggle more intensely with dysphoria and anxiety or other co-occurring illnesses to these things. So yeah, that's just some thoughts about that, and I would love to hear your thoughts. And I don't know if I'm ready for people to share these videos or for them to get too far at this point. I really like the very small amount of views I'm getting, but I'm gonna keep trying to make these a little bit better each week. I'm learning how to edit, and I'm learning how to make thumbnails, and yeah, you guys are all awesome, and I just want to again reiterate that difference isn't bad. And if you're feeling anxiety out in the world because you're different, that's not because you're broken. It's because the culture that you are in is broken. And hopefully together we can slowly change that culture. Anyway, thanks. Peace out.